Go further with the American Express Business Gold Card. Earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels when you book through AmexTravel.com. Whether your destination is a business conference or a client meeting, your purchases will help you earn more points for future trips. Experience more on your travels with Amex Business Gold. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
You know what's smart? Enjoying a fresh gourmet meal at home that you didn't have to cook. Meet Factor, your loophole in the laws of mealtime. Chef-crafted meals delivered with a tap, ready in just 2 minutes. You know what's even smarter? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Factor is dietitian approved, chef prepared, and you plated. Pretty smart, huh? Refresh your routine and eat smart with Factor. Learn more at factormeals.com.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett. We have a jam-packed show for you today. Deebo Samuel might get traded after all. The San Francisco 49ers regret some big-time money moves they made in recent years. And what is a dream trade the San Francisco 49ers could potentially make this offseason? All that coming your way in the next hour or so. But I want to introduce my guest, Dre from DreAreaSports. Dre, how's it going? Happy to have you on. How are you today?
Dude, I'm great, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about Niners. There's been some developments in the Deebo Samuel front. But I would say this, though. There was, after it was made public that he was allowed to go seek a trade, him and his agent, he made a post about something, and you replied with, I don't give a shit what he says anymore. And I absolutely agreed. I was like, you know what, Sterling? Goddamn, that's perfect. I don't care what he has to say anymore. And not only that, but I can openly admit now that the Deebo Samuel podcast is absolutely terrible. It's the worst. I was like, oh, man, this is brutal.
In retrospect, it may be one of the worst sports podcasts out there. I love Deebo, albeit his time in San Francisco is seemingly going to be done, which thankfully leads us into our first topic of the day, which yesterday, I'm done with Deebo. I'm okay being done with Deebo. The minute he said I'm done, I want to be out of San Francisco, I was like, all right, wrap it up. You're no longer a San Francisco 49er according to me, but about maybe an hour ago, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported this, that several teams have reportedly expressed interest in 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel, and preliminary talks on a potential trade have happened between Samuel, his agent Tory Dandy, and the team. So all the talk of Deebo Samuel was a bona fide released pre-June 1st. They don't want to pay that $15 million roster bonus on March 22nd. There is room, at least as of now, it seems like, that Deebo Samuel may actually get traded after all. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, look, we know that if he gets traded before, I think it's March 22nd, they avoid that $16 million signing bonus. I think overall, though, I mean, they would actually save more money if they just outright cut him. But I think the Niners are so focused on getting something in return for Deebo Samuel. And, you know, it's sad because, you know, for the longest time, Deebo was I don't want to say he's a face of the franchise, but he was a huge figurehead for the 49ers. And I was a huge Deebo supporter as well. But this last season, he did a lot of things that I didn't think looked very good for him. In terms of being a leader, in terms of being one of the faces of this team. So I agree that the time is it's come time to move on from Deebo Samuel.
But when you hear that, look, it seems like they were going to release him. Jed York probably doesn't want to pay that $15 million roster bonus on March 22nd. I don't know about you, but the assumption was, okay, that's it. It'll be a quiet exit off of the San Francisco 49ers roster. But the minute I saw they're actually having trade conversations with unknown teams, I got excited that this team may be somehow able to find some draft pick compensation for Deebo Samuel, whether it's a player or, fifth, fourth, sixth round pick, whatever it may be, because it felt like it was just going to be a money-saving move, wash your hands of him and move on. Whereas now there at least is some optimism that a trade could happen, and maybe, just maybe, you don't have to wait until post June 1st. You may get 2025 draft pick compensation instead.
Yeah, no, I think they're definitely trying to get something back in return. I mean, really, if you get any kind of draft compensation, that's great. For a team that wants to extend him, for a team that wants to sign him, I think they would rather trade him just for, a day 3 draft pick or something in order to make sure that they have exclusive rights to extend him and bring him on their team. If he gets outright cut, then it's going to be harder for them to work a deal if other teams are bidding for him. And it's crazy. Yeah, like I saw that the article on Bleacher Report that there are multiple teams that have shown interest in acquiring Deebo Samuel. I believe that one of them is probably the Broncos because you got Sean Payton there, and he knows all about how to use gadget guys. So that's something that he might be looking for in order to kind of take pressure off of their young quarterback. And there's a lot of teams out there that are looking for what they feel is an explosive, versatile player. And I think if they can get something for him, that would be absolutely incredible. I'd be so ecstatic to see them get something back in return.
You mentioned the Denver Broncos, so let's throw out some names of teams that we think could maybe be one of the multiple teams that want to acquire Deebo Samuel via trade. Now, my assumption, and I'm sure yours as well, is they're not going to get much for him. The contract's too high. The dead cap is really high. People are going to have to pay Deebo Samuel, whoever acquires him. And so the draft pick compensation will probably be around a 5th or 6th round pick. Maybe you get lucky and the team gives you a late 4th, but that's kind of wishful thinking. However, when I think of teams that could want Deebo Samuel, the Las Vegas Raiders come to mind. Pete Carroll, they're in win now mode. Maybe we'll see what happens with Max Crosby, but even teams like the Baltimore Ravens, who have that run heavy scheme with Todd Monken as their OC, you got Lamar, you get Derrick Henry, go get Deebo Samuel. You have Zay Flowers. You have this gadget heavy team that can beat you on every single level of the field. It also can have multiple home run hitters in the backfield alone. Or you also have teams like the Washington Commanders, Adam Peters. They wanted Aiyuk last year. Maybe they get Deebo this year. Of that kind of grouping of teams, who do you think maybe the number one team that you say could, one, utilize Deebo Samuel? Because keep in mind, the reason why he wants out, his ego's hurt. He's in his feelings. He's emotional. I think he has to go to a team where he's going to get the ball 70-plus times a year, be a primary part of their offense. Which one of those teams do you think could feature Deebo Samuel the most and give him what he desires as a wide receiver?
The two teams for me that I think would give him the most opportunity in terms of making plays on the field and getting the ball, I think the Commanders is one because they need a guy that can do multiple different things the way Deebo can, because that's going to open things up for McLaren. That's going to open things up for a lot of these guys. Hey, dum-dums. I love that.
Tommy!
Another team that I see that could have potential for him would be the Miami Dolphins. I mean, Mike McDaniel has already worked with him before. He knows how to use him. He knows how to utilize his strengths. Now, if you have a guy like that underneath with a guy like Tyreek Hill who's running around stretching the field, that's going to open
might
up
get traded as well.
Who might get traded as well, but I'm saying just hypothetically, that would open up a lot of things for Deebo Samuel, because I mean, look, if the Niners were to trade him for Tyreek Hill, which I don't think would ever happen, but
no.
if they did, I made a video about that too. Might want to check that out. But anyway, if they did, I think that that would be like phenomenal for the Niners. But looking at it from the Dolphins, right? If they were to get Deebo Samuel for like a day 3 pick, whatever, and you partner him up with Tyreek Hill, that's good. I mean, I would feel like that's going to improve my offense, because now you have a guy in Tyreek Hill who's going to stretch the field. He's going to open things up underneath for Deebo Samuel, who's looking to get that 10-yard catch, 11-yard catch, or even like a short 8-yard catch and break a tackle and get more yards, because he's the big yak guy, even though he wasn't last year. So I think that would give him probably one of the better opportunities because McDaniel also knows how to use him because he coached him before.
It'll be interesting to see how the league views Deebo Samuel because in San Francisco, while there's good feelings in regards to what he did in 2019 through 2023, the fan base has somewhat turned on him, especially myself in recent weeks, seeing his downward trend in play. But it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the NFL and how they view Deebo Samuel. Do they view him as this player that can still contribute to your offense, or do they view him as a 29-year-old over-the-hump former gadget player that can give you maybe 400 to 500 yards per year and a couple touchdowns? My assumption is the latter. However, you never know what other teams can value him as. I do want to talk about timeline, though, because that March 22nd deadline is coming up really quick. Just over a month away. Today is February 20th. They have a month, essentially, to get him off this team. The scouting combine is next week. Could we see a deal take place next week at the combine? Like Klee Young points out here on the YouTube chat. Thank you, Klee, for tuning in here. I think the combine might be a great place to get Deebo off this team and maybe get you that draft pick compensation you want.
I mean, look, either way, if they trade him or if they cut him, they're still going to take on money. So at this point, they're like, hey, let's just, whatever we can get for him is a bonus. If we cut him, we save some more money, but we lose him. We don't get anything back in return. So anything at this point would do, I think, almost anything. But I think the combine could be a great place where you can start that conversation about moving Deebo Samuel for draft compensation. I don't think that you're going to get anything big in return in terms of players. I've seen mock trades where it's like Deebo and a bunch of picks go to the Raiders for Max Crosby, which, I mean, look, if that really happened, I'd be ecstatic. I mean, if Nico Harrison was their GM, he'd be like, let's do it. Yeah. But in reality, I think that, Deebo, he would probably get, like I said, a day 3 pick, 5th round pick. Anything for him would do at this point in terms of draft compensation. And I think there's a good opportunity that will happen, at least start the conversation or continue conversations at the combine when they're all going to be there. And we know that John Lynch was at the Senior Bowl, and who was he seen talking to was Mike Tomlin of the Steelers. And then all of a sudden there was a report that the Steelers are showing interest in trying to acquire Deebo Samuel. I can almost guarantee you that conversation started right there. He's like, hey, what do you think about Deebo Samuel? Like, oh, well, I don't know. But the question is that what does the rest of the country think of Deebo Samuel? I mean, look, what we think about him. He was overweight, 20 pounds overweight, according to Tim Kawakami. He didn't have that explosive ability, couldn't break tackles. His speed altogether was way down. He looked slow. Now, some of this could have been contributed to the rib injury that he had. He had multiple injuries last year. But why is it that when he goes against the Miami Dolphins, all of a sudden, hey, look, that's Deebo of 2019. What the hell's going on here? All of a sudden, he's like, hey, look at me. I'm tearing it up. I'm breaking tackles, and I'm scoring touchdowns. And this is something he couldn't do, I think it was a week earlier, not 2 weeks earlier, against the Rams, when they literally tried to feature him.
There are a lot of people that believe that Deebo Samuel was showcasing himself at the end of the year. Didn't play against the Cardinals, but was definitely like, look, my year's over. You're probably going to cut me in the offseason anyways. I'm going to go showcase myself for a week or so. Then I'm going to take the rest of the year off and say, hey, the last you saw of me was really good. I can still contribute to your offense. You mentioned Tim Kawakami, though, and he had a really big report that came out today, albeit, really isn't anything new per se, but it does give you insight into maybe how the Niners want to spend or will spend this offseason. A lot of conversation stemming around Brock Purdy's new contract, but he seemed to kind of signify a shift inside the organization. No longer are they going to accept, high-paid contracts with players that are underperforming. Deebo Samuel being one of the bigger ones in recent years to do so. 3 years, $71 million contract, and really outside of a 6 to 8 game stretch in 2023, never really lived up to that. Didn't play much in the playoffs, didn't do much for them when they were in the Super Bowl. and I quote here because he talks about Brandon Aiyuk being a regret of the San Francisco 49ers, who they paid $30 million per year last offseason too. We know here we detailed every single thing they went through, the trade requests, the social media posts, the hold-ins, the holdouts. He had the sweatpants gate with Kyle Shanahan during training camp or during preseason.
Oh God,
one day.
remember that?
There was so much going on with Aiyuk, and he seemingly rubbed the team the wrong way. But also, Tim Kawakami mentions Nick Bosa's contract of a contract this team may, I guess, somewhat regret because of how high the cap hit and guarantees were. But to read you what Kawakami quoted here, he states, "I know that there is still frustration about the way Brandon Aiyuk handled his bitter negotiations last summer, and that members of the Niners front office were never thrilled about giving him a $30 million a year deal on the eve of the regular season." I'll tell you this, it's a really bad look for a team that is going to watch Deebo Samuel, who his 3-year contract is overall not great, kind of a bust, if you will. Then to say the next day or in the same summer or same offseason, like, yeah, we kind of didn't want to pay Brandon Aiyuk either. Like, that's a really bad look for a front office, right?
It
Like,
is.
how is that not?
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
But the way it was handled as well, the fact that it went so long, right up to the beginning of the season, it took forever to get this deal done. And then they were like, okay, we'll tell you what, why don't you go seek a trade? And then every team he found, they were like, well, we're not going to extend the guy. Well, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. It's kind of like, look, the whole point of it was for you to go seek a trade. Now, granted, if he wasn't going to sign an extension, the Browns weren't going to trade for him. If these other teams like the Patriots or whatnot, if they wanted to trade for him and he wasn't going to sign an extension, they weren't going to trade for him. They're like, forget it. And so that's where he kind of had his own leverage. Like, well, I don't want to go there because I'm not going to sign there. Then it was like, what are you doing? And then the fact that Aiyuk even admitted, like, yeah, I probably put, stretched out a little too long or whatnot. I was like, bro, come on. Why would you even say that? At this point, just show up and freaking get to work. And we saw, look, he showed up. He was not in football shape. He did not look the same whatsoever. He looked like a shell of himself. He cut his hair, so that looked even weird. It was like, oh my God, what is happening to Brandon Aiyuk? And all the while, Deebo Samuel was there, and at first he was looking pretty good too. But he started to fall apart as the season went on. And look, I think that when it comes to the Niners, this was an awakening for them because I felt like they were under the impression that, hey, look, we'll get these guys in. Once we get them in, they know what to do. They're professionals. We'll be fine. And it wasn't. Trent Williams did not look the same. Aaron Banks, he wasn't part of this conversation, but he looked terrible. I just want to throw it out there. Brandon Aiyuk did not look the same.
He's at Aaron Banks, an impending free agent.
and then, like, Brandon Aiyuk is, like, dropping passes. I'm just like, oh, my gosh. It was just unbelievable the amount of the lack of production we were getting out of Brandon Aiyuk. And I feel like the 49ers front office didn't do a good job at getting these contracts done early and getting them in, especially to miss OTAs, to miss minicamp when you're putting in all the new plays, all the new offensive designs. They weren't even there. They just had to read about it or be there during the lecture, but not actually run around and run these routes and understand, how they're played. And one of the things that we saw last season was that, and this is not just from Brandon Aiyuk, but we saw from Deebo Samuel as well, was their route running was awful last season. There were so many routes that they ran not to the efficient level that they had ran in previous years. And it showed. The timing was way off. And what do you have? You have Brock Purdy, who's a timing quarterback. And if your timing is off, then it's going to affect him dramatically. And so they need to learn from last season and get these contracts done at a much faster rate, especially when it comes to, Brock Purdy, whose contract's coming up real soon.
Well, the way I kind of read into what Kawakami was stating here, while yes, everything you said is true, having Aiyuk on the field in training camp and OTAs and preseason would undoubtedly helped the chemistry, and maybe he doesn't get hurt. Who knows? However, the way I read this was there's going to be a shift into how they do future contracts. They're tired of losing. You read what Kawakami states about Nick Bosa, which I think Nick Bosa overwhelmingly deserved to get paid. Defensive Player of the Year, one of the best edge rushers in the entire league. He's a player that you point to and say, go win me a football game, and usually can get it done, albeit at times there has been some inconsistencies. But Kawakami states this: for a team that absolutely hates setting contract precedents, the Niners probably don't feel great in retrospect for buckling and giving Nick Bosa $34 million a year and $120 guaranteed, which still lands as the highest salary and most guaranteed money in the league amongst defensive players. When I hear that, and this really isn't an indictment on Nick Bosa, but when I kind of match that with the Aiyuk quota of like they're kind of resentful, they're irritated, they didn't handle things correctly, albeit San Francisco deserves a lot of blame in that because they didn't get the job done early. When I hear that, I go, well, what's going to happen with Brock Purdy? How are they going to handle a George Kittle extension? What about Fred Warner? What about Dre Greenlaw? What about when these younger free agents or these younger draft picks, Pearsall, Mustafa, Garendo, all these guys, albeit it's far in the future, Dominic Pooney, when those guys are up for new deals, how are they going to handle these things? Are they going to get fickle and penny pinch even more and carry these things out longer? Or can you view Diamador Lenore's mid-season extension as maybe San Francisco becomes more proactive in signing their stars, hoping to get them on cheaper contracts and avoid the entire free agency process?
Well, I think they're learning. Look, early on in this regime, the Lynch and Shanahan regime, the team was not very good. The team sucked really bad. And remember, I think their first offseason, they signed like 6 free agents, and they were like, yeah, and they still sucked. And so as they started to draft, better and better players and get younger and get more talent, and now they're starting to deal with, the growing pains of, okay, now we got to pay these guys. And so I honestly think that last season they thought, hey, look, hey, what's up? They thought, hey, look, if we just get these guys in here, they know what to do. They're professionals. They've been in the system. That's great. But they're learning now, okay, look, we can't be that naive anymore. We need to make sure that we're locking up these guys to the deals that we want them at, and doing it at an efficient rate, right? When you look at Nick Bosa, right, I would say this. It's not all on Nick Bosa. I mean, look, they started the season off with a loss to the Bears when Trey Lance in the monsoon, and then they beat Seattle, and then they lost to Denver. And at that point, they were like, get him in here as soon as possible and give him whatever he wants, because they were losing games, and they were like, okay, we got to get him in here. I think it was that season, right?
That was the previous year, because Nick Bosa signs the Thursday before week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He gets no sacks. Drake Jackson gets 3 sacks, and we all say, oh, my God, who needs Nick Bosa for a week?
Drake Jackson's amazing. And then we never saw him again.
Right.
So still, it's just one of those things where they were under the gun to get that done, and Nick Bosa was well-deserving of his big contract. And look, people will argue today, like, oh, well, he's not as good as he used to be. He got his money, and now he's, somewhat lackluster. I don't believe so. I think that every down he is a major impact on for their defense. He has to be accounted for wherever he's at on the field. I think when you look back to, let's say, the first Super Bowl run in 2019, they were stacked. They had, DeForest Buckner, they had Eric Armstead, they had Dee Ford, and obviously they had Nick Bosa, but then they also had guys on the defensive line. They had depth. They had DJ Jones. They had Ronald Blair. They had a lot of these guys I think they didn't have Kinlaw yet, but they had a lot of these guys that were there, Solomon Thomas, and it gave them a ton of depth. And so throughout the year, they were dominating. One of those games against the Packers where Aaron Rodgers takes like 2 steps and they're all over him. And I was just like, wow, this is insane. And then as that season went on, they started getting hurt. Blair got hurt, out for the year. DJ Jones had the ankle injury. He was out. a bunch of guys started getting hurt. Solomon Thomas got hurt.
Got hurt.
D Ford got hurt. And so then you started to see a defensive line that didn't have that depth that it once had. And that's where all of a sudden you start seeing Nick Bosa's numbers starting to drop a bit because he's playing more snaps because he has to. He's not just the guy that comes in for pass rushing. He's in there every single down. And I think a lot of these guys, when it comes to Buckner and Armstead, they all started to wear down because their depth, started to leave them due to injuries. I think we'd have had those guys, we would have smashed the Chiefs anyway. And so what did you see this past Super Bowl? You saw the Philadelphia Eagles, and they had a much deeper team.
Yeah.
And their defensive line just ran through the Chiefs' offensive line. So I think, look, there's a lot of talk about defensive ends they could trade for. And look, all those names are sexy, and I love all three of the names. I have videos about that on my channel as well. But I feel like if they focus on the draft and on deepening their defensive line through the draft, I think they can have a really, really solid defensive line going into this season.
I think you're right. I think with $50 million now to spend in free agency, they have 10 draft picks this year. Maybe they get an extra one with Deebo Samuel, hopefully being traded in the next week or so. I also think a lot of what they do, like there seems to be this mixed opinion of, do they get Brock Purdy's contract done pre-free agency, pre-NFL draft, or do they get things done post-NFL draft? I do wonder if the Aiyuk situation, the lingering effects of it, how it kind of, I don't want to say set a tone for the season, but certainly didn't help the tone for the season. The constant social media stuff, again, the sweatpants gate and the social media posts, and albeit Brock Purdy and him are very different people and they want to go about things differently. You can tell Aiyuk was like, I better get my money. And Purdy seems to be much more of like, look, I want to get paid, but also I want to help this team win. And not to say Aiyuk doesn't want to win games either. It's just people prioritize different things, and
I mean,
for
all
them.
the posts on Instagram that the Branon Aiyuk was posting, I was like, oh my God, can we just get this over with already? It was so nauseating to follow that.
in that vein, I feel like I'm kind of shifting towards the opinion of the Niners may want to get this thing done as quick as possible and not let this thing linger before free agency and before the NFL draft. I know Kawakami and Matt Barrow said today, like April feels like the day, or maybe early in the offseason program feels like the time frame to get a deal done for Brock Purdy. But I'm hoping that they've learned a thing or two. And if they're that frustrated, if they're that, in a way, I guess, resentful for Aiyuk and Nick Bosa, making them, bite their nails and sit there and hold out for almost the entirety of the offseason program. Like, I remember being there when Nick Bosa showed up for one day, said, what's up to the media, then said, I'll see you in 4 months when I get my money. It was like, oh, like he means business here. And I'm hoping San Francisco has seen what those two players have been able to do for you when you're healthy, and what they haven't been able to do for you for entirety of seasons when they aren't in the offseason program. And I think from all indications, Brock wants to get things done. The Niners want to get things done. But if you had to pick a time frame, do you think Brock Purdy's deal gets done pre-draft or post-draft this year?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like it needs to get done before free agency. Because how can you go and sign a top flight center, a top flight wide receiver, free agent for that matter, or make a trade for one of these big defensive ends, let's say, and sign him to extension if you haven't even signed your quarterback yet? Like, well, what about your quarterback? Oh, we're working on that. We're getting real close, but we want you here. Well, what if he doesn't sign? What's your backup plan? Tanner Mordecai. No, it's not.
Oh,
so, Aaron Rodgers. I hate that argument of bringing Aaron Rodgers in. That'd be the worst thing. I always say, anyone who wants Shanahan fired, then you bring in Aaron Rodgers, and he'll find a way. He'll find a way to get him and Saleh fired.
He's the eater of worlds and ayahuasca.
Yeah. He would get Saleh and Shanahan fired on the same day. Like, oh, I did
honestly,
it. Yeah,
he honestly might.
So
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so I really do believe that they want to get this done before free agency, because that's going to give them more bargaining power, because that contract would already be done, signed, and set in place for their for their budget, for their salary cap. And so they know exactly how much they want to spend on any kind of free agent, let's say a wide receiver, offensive lineman. So to me, it has to be March 12th. I think March 12th is the deadline. Are they going to reach it? Maybe not, but I would imagine tentatively their deadline is we got to get it done by March 12th. Because then if that gets done, then we can go after all these other free agents that we, quote unquote, haven't been talking to, and we can start getting these deals done. But I still believe that, like, let's say you want to go ahead and get a T. Higgins, he's not going to sign here if you don't even have your quarterback signed. And then the Chargers reach out to him and go, hey, we got Justin Herbert. We're ready to rock. He's going to be like, yeah, let's go.
We got franchise tag, so it may not even be an option, but they got Devontae Adams. You never know. I do wonder what gets done first. Deebo Samuel getting traded, which March 22nd is a deadline for that, or does San Francisco sit back and say, you know what, we got to get Brock done, but we got to prioritize getting Deebo out of the building first, then looking at our offseason, what we can do and who we can sign.
See, I think that Deebo Samuel is just like, hey, they already know this guy's gone. They know this guy's out, halfway out the door. So if they can work out a trade, then I think that they get something in return as opposed to him just walking. So I think they would take a draft pick, and I think a team wouldn't hesitate to say, yeah, I'll trade you for a 5th round draft pick. I'll get Deebo Samuel, because if you trade him for a 5th round pick, it makes the other team feel like, dude, we just robbed them, dude. We got a guy who could run, he could catch. If he's in shape and he's not hurt, this last season was such a disaster for him.
Is it wrong that I think one of the best places he could go is the Steelers, but also one of the worst places he could go is also the Pittsburgh Steelers? Like, Mike Tomlin is great at massaging egos, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. Oh my goodness, who was the guy that was on the team then got traded? Chase Claypool. He's done this for a long time, and I think that there would be chemistry there. He would kind of give them shades of maybe a Hines Ward, a guy who really wasn't a deep ball guy but can run through anybody, albeit the ages certainly matter here. Deebo seemingly over the hump, albeit maybe can still give you a little bit of oomph on offense. I also think that Pittsburgh would be a pretty bad place to be for Deebo Samuel, because look at George Pickens. I mean, he's still a diva. Deontay Johnson last year, as Strawberry Reacts points out on the YouTube chat, still a diva. Don't block. Like, it may be a great thing for him, but also a bad thing for him. However, you mentioned Kyle Shanahan, and we got a tidbit of information today via Matt Barrows on the 49ers Plus and Minus podcast with Tim Kawakami, and he stated that Kyle Shanahan, for the first time maybe forever, as a Niner head coach, will likely attend the NFL scouting combine. And I'm not sure if this means much to you, but to me, this is a clear indication that you better hit on these draft picks. You are in a year where it's a make or break for you this year. If you pay Brock Purdy and you don't give him the roster around him, can make or break your entire tenure as a head coach. He's going to be there. Hopefully it seems that way. They got to hit on all these picks, make the right moves. And if they don't, this is a message from the up top saying, get your ass to Indianapolis and figure this thing out. Because if you don't, that clock is ticking on your head coaching tenure.
Yeah, I believe so. I think that, the ownership is, looking at Kyle saying, hey, you got to hit. We got all these draft picks. You got to make something happen here. Now, obviously there is the potential to do a trade to acquire a big name. But then again, if you do that, now you're talking about reworking a contract and giving this person an extension. That's a lot of money they're spending. Yep. But we've also heard from Kawakami that the Niners are that they want to go all in on this season, obviously because the Super Bowl is in Santa Clara. So they're like, hey, we want to host this with our team there.
So good, so good, so good.
Get ready, because it's time to save at your Nordstrom Rack store. Now through February 23rd, take an extra 40% off red tag clearance boots, jackets, and sweaters. We're talking the best cold weather styles from Vince, Cole Haan, Sam Edelman, and more. All on sale for even less. All sales final. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's gonna be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
So, to me, the way that they've gone about business, I feel like they can't resist the temptation to see if they can work out one of these trades. Because, look, if they made a trade for either a Max Crosby or a Myles Garrett, you're getting a huge piece in return. Obviously, you're giving up a lot of your depth because you're bringing in a huge piece who's gonna, you have to pay a lot of money. But it's going to be a big piece to your defensive line. Now, they tried that with Hargrave, and that didn't work. I think with these two, it's a little bit different because, Myles Garrett is probably the biggest, baddest defensive end in the entire league. I think he's better than Nick Bosa. So as long as you get him on the line, he's going to be a monster regardless. But if you get him, what does that mean with the rest of your line? How deep is your line? With Myles Garrett and like what kind of flexibility does he give you in order to acquire more talent? Probably not a lot. That's why I really believe that, they want him there at the scouting combine because they say, hey, look, we need everybody full press. Everyone has to be all hands on deck. This is it. And I think because the Super Bowl is going to be in Santa Clara, that's even more of a driving force for them to say, hey, you need to be included in everything that we do for this season moving forward. The one guy that I think the Niners have a better chance of getting would be like a Joey Bosa, because if he gets cut, then you can sign him. And you don't have to give up your draft picks to get him. You just sign him to a 1 or 2 year deal, which I think he would do. And I think kind of like, I hate to say this, but kind of like the San Francisco Giants, I almost feel like they're – that's just a bad comparison. But in the Brian Sabian era, I almost feel like this team may be hunting for the veteran short-term contracts like a Joey Bosa, like a Devontae Adams.
Should be in that conversation too.
Right, but there's also there's been indication coming out of Khalil Mack is that he doesn't want to go anywhere else. He wants to stay in San Diego. And if that's the case, I think they're probably going to keep him there.
Los Angeles now, unfortunately.
Yeah, Los Angeles. Thank you. They're always going to be San Diego to me. But no, I'm glad they're putting more pressure on Kyle because look, last year it wasn't good. It was really bad, very underperforming, and like everyone keeps saying, this whole Band-Aid approach to fix your defensive line, that didn't work. That was a disaster.
I really feel like that this is the highest pick they've had in the first round since they had 12 and traded it up for Trey Lance at number 3 in 2021. It kind of feels like, Kyle doesn't mind sending the scouts and the assistants out there when you're picking in the late 20s and early 30s. But once you get, near that top 10, it's okay. Here comes the big guns. I got to see these guys up close and personal. Yeah. If he does indeed go to the scouting combine. But also, like you mentioned, this team is never really afraid to make trades, whether it's on draft day. They traded up for Beathard and Joe Williams. They traded up for Reuben Foster, traded back and got Solomon Thomas in 2017. They also have made trades, obviously, for Trey Lance, traded back and got Javon Kinlaw from 12 to 13. They went and got, Brandon Aiyuk and traded up for him. Like, this team is going to be aggressive, whether it's during the trade at the scouting combine. I just feel like that the aggressive move they make this offseason at the combine will likely be trading Deebo Samuel. Fingers crossed they can get that done. But I want to get into potential free agent signings in that dream trade that Bleacher Report had out there a couple of days ago. But first, I want to let everybody know, if you want to watch San Francisco 49ers play next year, want to go to a concert while the offseason is in full swing, if you even want to go to the NFL draft, go to SeatGeek.com and use our promo code 49ErsAccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. I know baseball just started today, Dodgers and Cubs.
Crazy.
I was trying to get tickets for that the games in Tokyo because I'll be in Japan during NFL free agency. I wanted to go. They were about $3,000 a pop, and I said, nope, I'll go to Disneyland instead. But if you want to go watch some baseball this year, use that promo code at SeatGeek.com, and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. But let's get into one potential free agent signing, because we're in the time of the year where there's no football being played. Free agency hasn't started just yet. About 20 days away from today, which is really close, but still very far away. And as every day goes by, a new report comes out. Well, this player makes sense for that team, and this team makes sense for that player. And yesterday, ESPN analyst Matt Bowen released his top 50 free agent list and kind of pinpointed the ideal candidates for each one. And as we all know, Charvarius Ward is going to be gone once the new league year begins. He has trauma in San Francisco, doesn't want to return, which makes complete sense for him and his family. But San Francisco now has a hole for the number 3 cornerback position on the team. And the next two topics are going to be a free agent signing, or a cheaper one, if you will, and that dream trade to fill that void. But Matt Bowen lists Los Angeles Chargers cornerback Asante Samuel Jr. as a potential perfect fit for the San Francisco 49ers. And before I pass things off to you, Dre, 1, do you like that potential signing? And 2, I go back to 2021, and I'm sitting there at the 95.7 The Game studios. Niners are on the clock. I'm pick Asante, pick Asante. The draft chime comes in, and it's Aaron Banks, and I'm like, what are we doing? Asante's right there. But what do you feel about getting Asante Samuel potentially in the red and gold in 2025?
I mean, that'd be great. I didn't research that enough. He's an outside corner, or does he play the slot as a nickel?
He primarily plays outside, so they would push Green or Lenore to the nickel spot next year.
I mean, look, if you brought in Asante Samuel Jr., that would solidify your secondary in terms of, your 3 corners. You'd have 3 quality cornerbacks that can make it a hard time for opposing quarterbacks. Now, obviously, look, they can only cover for so long. It's really dependent upon your defensive line. But I like the idea of Asante Samuel Jr. because you don't have a name that I'm going to target this guy instead, because Renardo Green and Lenore are both really, really good. And I think Asante Samuel Jr. will also be really, really good. And so that would help solidify their defense in terms of their secondary. So I am all for this. I don't know how much he'd be demanding, but I would love to have him as a part of the secondary.
Yeah, to give you some more context as to why he might make some sense for San Francisco before getting into that dream trade that Bleacher Report had. He started 16 games in 2023, played over 1,500 defensive snaps, and also had 1,000 of those snaps playing outside cornerback for the Chargers 2 years ago now. During that year, teams targeted him 66 times. He gave up a 56% completion rate and recorded 15 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and only allowed 2 touchdowns. The big drawbacks for him, though, are his health and his tackling. In regards to his health, he had a shoulder injury last year, knocked him out for almost the entirety of the season. He is quoted on saying it's a lifelong injury. So there is certainly some injury risk with signing him. But with that said, because of the injury history, he may make him a lot more cheaper. And it could kind of put him in that, boomer bust category. However, on a team that likely doesn't want to pay too much financially for a number 3 cornerback, if you're getting the best of Asante Samuel Jr., getting a really good coverage player, but then again, there's a tackling problems he had in 2023. He had 27 missed or broken tackles. That's a 28.7% missed tackle rate. That's essentially Talanoa Hufanga playing cornerback. Not really what you want on your defense.
They have a lot in common.
But
I mean, look, the guy's only 5'10". I mean, he's not a 6-footer. So, but most corners aren't huge, and the ones that are usually dynamic. But still, I think getting him on there would be a good thing. I don't think it would be a bad thing. It wouldn't be like bringing in Isaac Yadam. Right. Or Rock Yassin. Yeah, like this is more of an established player who I think would do a good job. Obviously, his father was hella good. So
Really good.
hopefully that
Really
translates.
good.
Yeah, Asante Samuel Sr. was badass. I remember he was talking shit to with the David Akers in the playoffs when he missed the field goal. He was like, "Yeah, you missed it," because they used to play together. But no, I'd be down. I'd be totally down for this, as long as you're not breaking the bank for it, which I don't think they would at this point.
Yeah, the market value is $1.8 million annually, so they'd pay him under what they paid Isaac Gadum last year per ESPN projections. So higher upside, maybe some more bust potential there, but ultimately a younger player and a player that in the last couple of years has proven to be a really good coverage player, albeit with some serious drawbacks, shoulder and the tackling problems.
Well, for him to say, "Oh, it's a lifelong thing," like, "Oh, don't say that," but he's only 25 years old. It's not like this guy's coming in at 28. 29, 30, no, he's only 25. This guy's super young. So yeah, I would be all for this. I would like if they brought him in, I would favor this move. I think it'd be badass.
I think it'd be a really nice cheap option where if you still like Daryl Luter Jr., if you want to maybe go draft a cornerback and even bring Rock Ya-Sin back, if Samuel is your third cornerback, I do think you need to have some depth behind him that can step in. But if you like Daryl Luter Jr. enough to keep him around for a third season, we'll see what they do this offseason. Maybe they sign a free agent or whatnot on top of Asante Samuel Jr. if they do indeed sign him. But I think it gives you a deeper room. It also gives you the ability to not have to really go into the draft saying, okay, we have to get defensive tackles and edge rushers and cornerbacks and safeties and offensive linemen. It almost takes one of those needs off of your list because a lot of mock drafts have Will Johnson out of Michigan going to San Francisco in the first round. I don't see that. And this cornerback class really isn't that good. There's some names in there. Kobe Bryant from Kansas is one. A lot of guys like. I think it's Noel Williams. I think that's his name. From Cal is another good one. However, if you can get Asante Samuel Jr., although there are some drawbacks, a cheaper option under $2 million per year annually per ESPN projections, I think it's really a nice fit for them. Although that dream trade is coming up next. But first, I want to let everybody know on the YouTube chat and on Twitter, if you want to perform like the GOAT himself, Jerry Rice, Dre has that Jerry Rice photo behind him over his, at least my shoulder, his left shoulder. You got to get yourself a can of GOAT Fuel. Whether you're an athlete, there he is against the Dallas Cowboys on Dre's screen.
No, it's the Raiders is when he broke the record.
Oh, excuse me, the Raiders, even better, even perfect. You want to be a GOAT like Jerry Rice, whether you're an athlete or a normal person like myself and Dre, GOAT Fuel can bring the best out of every single one of us. And if you're a big coffee drinker, it's a really good, healthy coffee alternative. Click that link down below and grab yourself a can of GOAT Fuel to feel like the greatest of all time. All right, Dre, we made it finally to the dream trade scenario for the San Francisco 49ers this offseason, this coming via Bleacher Report a couple days ago. And the way they made these trades was that they wanted to stay somewhat realistic. Like the Raiders aren't getting Josh Allen, right? Like the Jaguars aren't getting Patrick Mahomes, right? Those trades aren't happening, right? So they're somewhat realistic. They're based in, I guess, a version of reality that these trades could potentially happen, albeit maybe a little crazy at times. But I want to get your opinion on this because according to Bleacher Report, the San Francisco 49ers, quote unquote, dream trade would be them sending a third round pick to the Baltimore Ravens for Pro Bowl cornerback Marlon Humphrey. Do you love that idea for the San Francisco 49ers in 2025?
Absolutely. Marlon Humphrey's a badass, and he's tore it up against the Niners as well. Now, we're talking about a safety, right?
He's a cornerback.
He's a corner. So, I'm sorry. So as a corner, that would be awesome to have not only Renardo Green, but Deommodore Lenoir. Now Green becomes the guy that they probably would pick on, and they'd find out really quick that he's not someone that you could really pick on. I think Demo would probably go he'd become their nickel corner where he's very comfortable being at. But, yeah, I would be all for this trade. For a third-round pick, you're trading a third-round pick for a guy who's an absolute for sure thing. yes, I would do it in a heartbeat.
I think it's important to clarify that this trade is highly unlikely to happen.
Highly unlikely.
First off, but living in this warped Bleacher Report reality, to give them credit, they did explain as to how this deal could and why it could be made this offseason. One of the biggest reasons being the Ravens cap situation and who they have as impending free agents. Humphrey, 29 years old, inching closer towards 30 as the years go by. They could view his contract as an aging veteran, as like, look, is it really worth keeping you around? You're under contract for the next 2 seasons. You've got a void year in 2027, but we just paid Lamar Jackson a couple years ago. We're paying Derrick Henry a lot of money, but we got to protect those guys. Their identity is Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry on offense. Run and pound the rock and let Lamar do his thing as a phenomenal quarterback. But their left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, is a free agent. Would you rather keep your stud left tackle or your stud cornerback? There's a pretty obvious answer there, in my opinion. As of today, being February 20th at 3:50 on the Pacific West Coast, the Ravens have $12 million in cap space to spend. Likely isn't enough to bring back, 1, Ronnie Stanley, but 2, fullback Patrick Ricard is also a free agent. And knowing the way they want to do things out there in Baltimore, it may behoove them to move a player like Marlon Humphrey in order to retain Stanley and Ricard. Now, trading Humphrey would have a $15 million dead cap hit, but $9 million freed up in cap space. So you're talking about $21 million to spend at that point. And we all know this. Nothing speaks louder, whether it's in life, in sports, with your wife, with your spouse, than the almighty dollar. You got the finances in order. They say happy wife, happy life. I mean, let's be honest here. Happy checkbook, happy wife. It goes a long way to keeping your relationships alive and thriving. But to kind of give this credence, right? The cap situation doesn't favor the Ravens currently. You get rid of Humphrey, free up $9 million. He's 29 years old.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pop, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
Coming off arguably the best season of his 8-year career, he played 16 games. He had 67 tackles. He had 5 tackles for loss. He had 6 interceptions last year. That was top 3 in the NFL. He forced 2 fumbles. He had a pick 6. He was a Pro Bowler, and he made the 2024 All-Pro team this past year. Like, that right there just screams, if there's one move to make and you can keep the 11th overall pick, and you can keep your 2nd round pick, and you can trade Deebo Samuel in the process and get a 5th round pick back maybe, and you get Marlon Humphrey on top of that, and then you're talking about reestablishing your team as one of the best defenses in football, barring what they do in the NFL draft. I do want to give you some advanced analytics here per PFF, one of our good friends here of the channel, because my job allows me to have that premium PFF subscription now, which is phenomenal. But Humphrey,
right there.
Oh yeah, you know us. We are the top dogs of the PFF stuff. He had the 2nd highest coverage grade of his career, 81 coverage grade this past year. He had the highest run defense grade of his entire career, 70.4. Out of 78 defensive backs to play 50% of their team snaps, 3rd best coverage player in the entire NFL. Had the 3rd lowest passer rating allowed at 61.2. And you mentioned it earlier. Lenoir probably plays the slot if you get Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey was the 2nd best slot cornerback behind guess who last year? Diamador Lenoir. Like, they would have versatility out the wazoo if they can get Marlon Humphrey.
Crazy. Oh, my God. Not only that, but he had 15 pass deflections. I mean, that's damn near every game he had. He pretty much had a pass deflection in every game.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. He's a former first-round pick, 16 overall by Baltimore. He played for Alabama. He's 6 foot, 203. The guy is in great shape. His numbers speak for itself. I mean, look, the previous year in 2023, he only played in 10 games.
Yes.
And then you look at the previous year, he was 17 games. This past year, 16 games. And he absolutely dominated out there. I think that if you're in the mode of we're going all in on this season, this would be a trade that I would highly covet and be like, yeah, if Baltimore was like, yeah, let's do this because we need to free up cap space, I'd be like, dude, let's go. This guy would be an automatic game changer for your secondary going into the season. Yeah, again, another trade. I would do this over Asante Samuel Jr. I think Asante Samuel, again, is the player. He's the he's the Joey Bosa, both came from the Chargers, of the free agency where it's like, hey, look, if he's a free agent, we could sign him. You know, he probably wouldn't cost that much. Joey Bosa, if he's a free agent, let's offer him a 2-year deal. Let's offer him a 1-year deal with some guaranteed money we'll throw at him. Is Joey Bosa going to make a huge difference? I think he'll make a pretty significant difference, not like the other guys. But so I think, again, getting a trade done like this for Marlon Humphrey would be, holy crap, would be badass. I would be all for this trade.
And, you know, to kind of give this, I guess, a more possibility rating, if you will, a higher possibility rating, a lot of the trades we've talked about, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, albeit those, again, aren't likely along with this one, there's a common denominator in all those trades, all those players' contracts. You know what it is?
Trent Baalke is not involved.
Well, yes, that's very true. The other thing that is a common denominator is the fact none of these players have guaranteed money on their books. These guys are older players in their mid to late 20s. In Humphrey's case, he's 29. Zero guaranteed dollars the next 2 years on his contract.
Yeah, I mean, you would get him for next year and the year after. So it's kind of like, well, wait a minute. You're not just getting a guy who's going to be a free agent after this season. You actually got him for 2 years. And then he's an unrestricted free agent, which is like, whoa.
Well, and to add on to that, because he has no guaranteed money on his books, you can lower that cap hit instantly by giving him the guaranteed money he wants. So if you're worried about financials and money, like you're talking about an instant, not even an extension, a complete restructure. Maybe you sign him to 2027, you redo his deal. Like, again, unlikely to happen, but, and I do think San Francisco, the odds are between Asante Samuel Jr. and Marlon Humphrey, there's a clear indication they'd rather have Asante Samuel Jr., no trades involved, cheaper contracts, save money. Yes. Obviously, that one makes a lot more sense for San Francisco's case, but like Max Crosby, like Myles Garrett, like Marlon Humphrey, if you want to take that big swing, although I'd rather take it on the defensive line, you can free up more money of Marlon Humphrey's contract, get rid of that zero guarantee, give him the guaranteed money he wants at his age 29 season, lower his cap hit, fit him in your books, and have 2 years of Humphrey, if not more, if you want to keep him and get rid of that last void year for 3 seasons when he's age 32, which is almost a perfect age to move off of star cornerbacks. Now, again, unlikely, although when I saw this, I was like, why would the Ravens do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would they trade one of their top players for a 3rd round pick? But their cap situation needs some flexibility, and Humphrey provides that. And if San Francisco, say, gets into the draft, or, they get their Walter Nolan in round number 1, they trade Deebo for a 5th round pick, or, who knows? If the Ravens want Deebo Samuel so bad, how about a 4th round pick and Deebo Samuel from Marlon Humphrey? Get that done. That'd be awesome. Although, that'd again, unlikely, that'd be great.
I mean, look, I think the Ravens would probably entertain the idea of that, only looking at it from a money-saving aspect, and then be able to use that money towards keeping a lot of the players they have on the team. But look, if it's between him and Ronnie Stanley, I would imagine Ronnie Stanley takes a much higher precedence over Marlon Humphrey. And you could argue that, hey, look, you could probably find a replacement for him in the draft or through free agency. But after the year he had, I mean, look, dude, if the Niners are able to work this trade, I would be ecstatic to have Marlon Humphrey as your corner opposite, probably Demo Lenore, and that would be badass. Now, the other question is that, you have to solidify safety as well. I mean, obviously you have Hufanga. I don't think he comes back. I don't think they bring him back unless he comes back for a bag of chips. There's no way they're going to give him any kind of money. And when you got Jair Brown right there, he's like, dude, you drafted me. Granted, he had a crappy year last year, but still. So even with Jair Brown and Malik Mustafa as your safeties, getting a guy like Humphrey would make that secondary just look badass. And I would love that.
I think at safety, I don't think they're adding anybody big. I think it's Ashton Davis from the Jets. I think it's Julian Blackman from the Colts last year. It's a bargain bin. Get us a vet in case Brown stinks it up or Mustafa falls off a cliff next year, which I don't think is likely in 2025. But, Dre, thank you so much for being here. Let everybody know where they can find you on YouTube, X, and the rest of your social medias.
Yeah, you can find me at DreAreaSports on X, Instagram, and on YouTube at DreAreaSports. I go live at least once or twice a week, and then I drop videos all throughout the week. So I'm just trying to grow my channel and provide as much content as possible. I also cover the Golden State Warriors and the San Francisco Giants from time to time. But mainly the channel is surrounded, centered on the 49ers, which is the team I've been following for the longest time in my life. So they get precedent over everything else.
As they should.
Well, hey, before we go, let me ask you a quick question. What do you think about Drake Greenlaw? Is he going to come back? I just opened a can of worms right now.
Yeah, the comments are going to be crazy. Of course he's coming back. Of course.
I don't know.
I think they want to bring him back. I don't know if he wants to come back. The indication I've gotten from reading tea leaves and hearing what the reporters are saying is that if he wants to be his own man, that's never going to be in San Francisco as long as Fred Warner's here. And if the money's tight, depending on what they do, Greenlaw's probably going to be playing elsewhere next year.
Yeah. I just don't see how a team could be like, hey, we want to bring you in here. We want you to run the show.
Right.
I just don't think he's in a position to do that. Yeah. No way.
Yeah. Like Greenlaw, for much as I love him, I mean, I was wearing his jersey when he tore his Achilles, and I was like, well, this is a curse. Like, oh my God. What a terrible day for me.
It's your fault.
It is my fault.
We know now Sterling was the reason why that happened, because he was wearing the jersey. Take it off. Burn it.
Heartbreaking. I was just like, well, I can't wear this anymore, I guess. But
if you think that's bad, I have 2 jerseys in my closet that I don't even wear anymore. One of them is Colin Kaepernick. The other one,
Garrison Hurst.
No, the other one is Jimmy Garoppolo. A buddy of mine got me that, and I'm like, I can't. I don't know what to do with this thing. I can't wear it.
Freelance jersey, I guess, but you know.
No.
Maybe this year I'll buy you an Aaron Rodgers Niners jersey.
No, God, I hope not. If they brought him in, that would be the pits. Yeah.
Don't tell the great 1765 in the comments that he will be in the comments, and we love him so much here. But he wants Aaron Rodgers in the Bay.
Oh no! But I would rather them get Joe Flacco to back
which
up.
I think is
Brock
likely.
Purdy.
That feels more likely.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers.access is the Instagram, at 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. It's on the screen below Dre currently. Don't forget to use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com, and to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Also, get yourself a can of goat fuel down below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Leave that review. Check out DreAreaSports on his YouTube channel. I'll put it down below in the description. And as always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.